First-person shooters were huge on the Atari Jaguar. It's the one thing, the one genre that the Jaguar seemed truly ahead of its time in. You can argue that it wasn't a 64-bit console. You can argue that most of the games were 16-bit ports. But you couldn't argue that Alien vs. Predator and Doom were two of the biggest and best games on the system. And at the time, they were two of the best games in general. Arguably. But for those interested, I already reviewed Doom here on the channel, and I plan on doing Alien vs. Predator for Halloween this year. But there is one game in the genre that seems to get ignored on the Atari Jaguar. Maybe it's because it isn't as groundbreaking as it once was, even in the Jaguar's day. Or maybe it's because it isn't graphically impressive as the other two games that I previously mentioned. But regardless, I think it's a game that's still worth a look. And that's why today we'll be reviewing Wolfenstein 3D on the Atari Jaguar. Wolfenstein 3D was originally released in 1992 by Apogee Software. It was developed by id Software and was the third installment in the Wolfenstein series, with Castle Wolfenstein and Beyond Castle Wolfenstein preceding this one. The Atari Jaguar version of Wolfenstein 3D was released in May of 1994 and still has id working under the hood, but this time it was licensed to Atari for release on the console. For the time, this was quite the impressive release for the Jaguar, as it was still considered a marquee game in 1994, and the Jaguar version was seen as the next best thing to the MS-DOS version. In some cases, the Jaguar version was even better, running at a much higher resolution than the PC version. And this is evident when running towards and away from the walls, as when they scale, they are most definitely less pixelated and blocky. Yes, the Jaguar port was quite a treat for those who stuck it out with Atari's Kitty Cat console. But is it worth a play today? Well, if you ask me, absolutely. Wolfenstein is a classic, but let's take a look at the graphics, gameplay, audio, and presentation to see if you should track down a Jaguar console rather than playing Wolfenstein on your smart refrigerator. Or maybe your dryer. I mean, I'm sure you can play Wolfenstein on your toaster if you wanted to. Since we already mentioned the resolution, let's start by discussing the graphics. The game looks pretty good, even if Wolfenstein 3D is really showing its age in 2025. You only have the ability to move forward and back, strafe, and move to the left and right. There is no freeload. You always have your sights set dead ahead of you. But even so, the textures, pixels, walls, grounds, and enemies all look really nice and pretty colorful given the scenario and scenery. Lots of big names in the video game industry had a hand in this port, including John Carmack, John Romero, and American McGee, among others. And it shows that some real talent was involved with this game, as everything looks really crisp and scales nicely. The whole game just moves at a brisk pace. But it's the details that really make Wolfenstein 3D stand out on the Jaguar. The enemies reacting to being shot, the dogs moving faster than their human counterparts, the evil grin on Blazkowicz's face, the guy that you play as, when he finds a new weapon, and even the decor and moss on the walls make the world feel a little more alive and real. The doors slide open convincingly, and the weapons even have noticeable recoil. It all gives a good sense of power when shooting your guns. Wolfenstein 3D won't be the most impressive Atari Jaguar shooter that you'll ever play, but it is pulled off very well for the console, and I think that most people will be pleasantly surprised at how good this game looks, even by today's standards. The presentation, well, that's not much to write home about. You have a very basic menu, some text-based interludes, before and after missions, and a sort of scorecard after each level. The scorecard lets you know how many enemies you left alive, how much treasure you missed, and how many secrets you still have to discover if you go back and play again. It's also nice that you can alter the controls a bit in the menu, and the ability to save is very much appreciated. You have up to 3 save slots, so you and 2 other people can save your progress and pick up the game anytime after you shut it off. But be careful, hitting 1 through 3 on the number pad will save in one of the 3 slots. And there's no asking if you want to overwrite a previous save. It just does it. Luckily, you don't really need to press the number pad for too much else, besides when you want to use the map, which is assigned to the number 5. And that's really the only useful thing on the number pad outside of saving. So accidentally saving and overwriting the wrong game, well, it's not as likely as I initially thought it would be. On to the audio, I have to say that it's a nice treat for this Jaguar port of Wolfenstein 3D. The music is pretty good sounding. Some of it's not atmospheric, but the game tries, and the music's pretty memorable. But even if it doesn't always give us a great sense of danger or mystery, the music is always pleasant to hear. The sound of your gun is done pretty well too, which is nice, because you'll be hearing this over and over and over again. Dogs barking, enemies groaning as they're shot and dying, and officers and soldiers yelling out things like Achtung and SS is a nice addition. Everything is clear and clean sounding, and I really enjoyed listening to Wolfenstein 3D as much as I like playing it, especially with the clear sounding voice samples. Wolfenstein is a good game, but it's no doubt showing its age. It's also a very typical early first-person shooter. Your only objective is to reach the end of the level in order to reach the next one and do it all over again. Occasionally you'll need to find several keys, but otherwise you'll be killing the same enemies and exploring single-story bunkers, strongholds, and castles over and over again. There are a fair number of bosses and traps that provide a bit of challenge, but sometimes they just feel unfair, especially if you don't know what's coming and when. There's a small variety of firepower that you'll get, such as pistols, machine guns, chain guns, rocket launchers, and even a flamethrower. The chain guns, machine guns, and pistols all use the same ammo, and once you collect the stronger version of that gun, well, you can't go back to the weaker version. That is to say, you can't go back to the pistol once you have the machine gun, and you can't go back to the machine gun once you have the chain gun. Having a choice to go backwards would have been nice, but you don't really need to, so it's fine. The rocket launcher and flamethrower can be switched to using the option button, which is a strange choice. I really thought the weapons would be on the number pad, but using the option button works. You can strafe by holding the C button while moving side to side, and this is a must if you want to get the jump on enemies and have a tactical advantage. Holding C works surprisingly well, and if you've played Doom, well, you'll know how it works. The controls are solid, but eventually the game devolves into you hugging all the walls up and down, looking for secrets in order to gain more health, ammo, and new guns. But at no point while playing Wolfenstein 3D for this review was I not having fun. I enjoyed the whole playthrough. The repetition might get to some people, but I personally could play this one for hours and hours and enjoy myself the whole time. There's something about the presentation, the soldiers yelling at you, shooting the enemies. It's fun. And there are a lot of little additions, improvements, and differences between this version and the PC version of Wolfenstein 3D. Most of the changes are slight alterations to how much ammo you can pick up and carry, some differences in graphics and how they scale, etc. Unless you're a die-hard Wolfenstein fan though, you probably won't notice many of these improvements or differences. So overall, I really don't have much more negative to say about Wolfenstein 3D on the Atari Jaguar. As I said, some people will find the game to be repetitive, but I think most people will enjoy it for what it is. It's an early first-person shooter that predates even Doom, but it still plays great, sounds great, and looks good. The whole thing is a blast from the past and worth owning if you have a Jaguar. So I don't even know if we really need a pros and cons section for Wolfenstein 3D. Outside of it being repetitive, everything else is all pros. think it'll be a surprise to anybody who has watched up to this point of the video, but I'm going to give Wolfenstein 3D on the Atari Jaguar a solid 5 ergonomic Jaguar controllers out of 5. It's a great game, and is actually my favorite first-person shooter on the system. Yes, Doom is great, and Alien vs. Predator is an iconic Jaguar game, but I feel like Wolfenstein 3D is an overlooked gem that is usually stuck in the shadow of those games. And that's a shame, because it's very much a game worth playing and experiencing. And the Jaguar version isn't a half-bad way to do so, if you already own a Jaguar. I wouldn't recommend buying one just to play it, but if you have one, then I feel like you should have Wolfenstein 3D. But you've listened to my thoughts on Wolfenstein 3D for the Atari Jaguar, so now I want to hear from all of you. Do you agree with my thoughts and score on this version of Wolfenstein 3D? Have you played any other versions of this game? Do you like the game? How does this version compare to those others? And did I miss anything when discussing the game? Let me know your thoughts on all this and anything else Wolfenstein related in the comments down below. And please give a like if you enjoyed the video and subscribe if you haven't already. I review and discuss all things Atari here on the channel, so if that sounds good to you, well, you know what to do. Alright guys, it's been fun, but it's time to wrap this video up. I've been the 7800 Pro Gamer, a soldier who only ever looks forward, never up or down, in an ancient forbidden castle known as the Atari Network, and I'd like to thank you all for watching. And until next time, don't forget to stay classy, Atarians.